On this episode of Property Journal, I'm talking to Steve Bolton. I've known Steve since 2006 when he was pioneering a property investment model that he later went on to franchise. We talk about the importance of looking after your mental health and how he goes about juggling business with pleasure and family, and the research and stress testing that's gone into not just property investment, but multiple other businesses. A real true entrepreneur. There's so much to learn from this episode. Welcome to Property Journal.
Great to be here, John.
I've been really looking forward to this. We've known each other 16 years?
About 2006.
Yeah, going back, and there's a lot of things to cover in the journey, both business, personal, but let's start with, who is Steve Bolton?
Entrepreneur, 25 years, property investor historically, and now I'm an angel investor.
So tell me more about Steve Bolton himself.
So grew up in Bournemouth and I left school with no qualifications. Went into work, started my first business in my mid-20s, and on paper was a millionaire in my early 30s, which was amazing. Lost everything, lost my house, had to start all over again. Didn't go bankrupt, but came close to it. Then got involved in property, bought 20 houses, franchised a business model that led to over £400 million worth of property being purchased and acquired through that franchise network. Then went into digital technology, e-commerce, investing, and now run an angel investment fund.
That's impressive. It's a proper serial entrepreneur, basically. One of the things I've always felt with you is you really think things out. You ultimately research and stress test. I can remember when you were looking at the HMO, multiple occupation model, and you were putting adverts out there without even having a property, without even having a room to rent. And you were advertising different ways of getting attention for these rooms, and you settled on beautiful room, and that proved the model. So then we went into ultimately the franchising of it, and then credit crunch. Had you stress test for a recession? Had you actually thought ahead of making something like that recession proof?
Yeah, definitely. I started my first business in 1994, had two companies in 2001, and then September the 11th and foot and mouth disease happened, wiped out both businesses. Right. One went back to break even and the other one had to put into voluntary liquidation. So I went from being a natural optimistic entrepreneur to being somebody that just thought about risk every day, and I do now. What can go wrong? What can go wrong? Because it was two external events that had a massive negative impact. And so when I wanted to innovate a model of shared housing to get 300% more rental income, I thought I need to test the competition and I need to test what customer demand there is. So little £50 advert in the back of the newspaper, beautiful rooms to rent, all bills included. It wasn't student letting, it was for young working professional people. I got 104 inquiries. And I just thought, I'm only going to buy a house probably with 6 rooms to rent, and for £50 marketing spend, I've got 104 people interested. So that gave me the confidence to buy I didn't have a property at the time, right? So it was, but rather than doing what most people do, buy a house and then figure out, can you actually fill it up? The other thing I did is I went to view 20 other rooms that other people had done. So I was checking out the competition and I saw that tenants were treated really badly, the quality of accommodation was really poor, and I just thought there's a massive opportunity here, and turned out there was.
That's super impressive. So the other thing I can remember that at the time that you were ready to scale the franchise opportunity, I remember thinking, gosh, if you just got a big chunk of money and systemized this across the country, potentially with me involved at that time, which is how we were combining, could have made a lot of money, built a huge portfolio. But you were very much driven to look to mentor and build a community. Where did that come from?
I think it was partly risk management and partly what I'm passionate about doing. So the 3 T's in property are the negatives, if you like: toilets, tradespeople, and tenants. And basically, I wasn't passionate about property. So I bought a portfolio of 20 houses, about 80 rooms to rent, which was great. And then also from a risk point of view, yes, I could have taken on a lot more investment, a lot more debt, and got 200. But if there was a market turn, or you never know what's going to happen, right? It's always things like COVID, things outside of your control that have a dramatically negative impact, or they can do. But then the other side of it was teaching other people. So to start with, it was friends, family. Everybody said in the beginning it won't work. And then when I started to do it and they saw it working, they were like, will you teach me how to do it? So brother-in-law's got property, my sister built a portfolio, then friends, and then it just really expanded from there. And it was my accountant that said, why don't you franchise your business model? And that's what led me onto it. And it was that passion for training, mentoring, coaching that really drove the business to be successful.
Yeah. And of course, I got involved at that point. And I don't mind admitting to you that I didn't know if it was going to work. My own development model had stalled. Doing a nice property in a nice location, typically all was sold. And of course, going into credit crunch, it was quite frightening. But your model seemed ahead of the curve, and it seemed that it was clearly working. But the franchise side of things, ultimately, would it work? And of course, you proved that. How important has that community that you've built been going forwards, right up to the present day?
I think community is everything, right? Every business, it's a trite saying, but it's all about the people. Whether that's your staff, whether that's your franchise partners, whether that's your supply partners, whether it's builders, tradespeople. So much of business is about people. Yeah. And I think if they are value add and values aligned, and I think we've both had experiences in the past of being in business with the wrong people, or having a supplier that's not quite right, or customer that's a complete and utter pain in the backside. For me, community is everything, people's everything, and every business I've ever had since 1994, I've always had partners. So some people are a lone wolf and they go out on their own, sure, and I can do everything myself and not going to share anything. I've always been much more collaborative and enjoy that.
So clearly you've got a diverse, multifaceted journey in business. There must be some common denominators within the business side of things that you've learned, you've realised patterns. Can you elaborate on that? Because business can be really hard, right? A lot of people get it wrong. Yeah. They set up a business and it fails, or at a certain point they don't pivot or move accordingly. And you mentioned how important timing is, but can you elaborate in terms of what you've learned and put into practice from a business point of view that will help people watching?
Sure. So I think I've got some core principles. One of those is strategy trumps tactics. So having the right strategic plan and knowing where you're going. One of the ways of doing that is, for the most part, every business is going to have customers or need customers and competitors. So doing deep research you can learn so much from your competitors, right? So it's one thing I will always do is do a deep dive on the competition, whether you're a property developer building houses, what else are people building, what's the spec, the standard, the price point, how long have they been around? So the more you understand about the competition, the more you can be different. And then the second element is the customers, speaking to whether it's people buying property, renting property, investing into a business, whatever it might be. So deep research on those two things. And then I love a quote from Warren Buffett: observe the masses and do the opposite. And so many times in business, I am amazed at why do people do it that way when actually, if you did it that way, so for example, high quality rooms to rent, why are tenants, when they actually spend most of their wages on their rent, treated like the scum of the earth? Where's your reference? Who's your past landlord? Why are you moving? Can you afford the rent? It's like, I'm sorry, excuse me. Who's actually the customer in this transaction? Who's spending a huge amount of money and signing a 6-month contract? So that sort of thing, I looked at that. And one of the reasons we never used to use letting agents was because actually they're your customer, have a direct relationship with them, treat them well. So when, yes, you do the reference checks and all those sorts of things. So I think I like to look for ways that business is done differently. Angel investing. Most funds will make 20, 30, 100 investments. We don't. We have a sniper strategy, not a shotgun, where we choose very selectively and we support those businesses like Jack to be successful. Yeah. We roll our sleeves up and get hands on. Yeah. So customers, competition, and how can you do things differently? And so bringing us up to today, are you still investing in property? Are you involved in property at all? No, I started to exit. There was a tax change that came in 2015. I took the government to the High Court with a friend. It was a devastating tax, I thought, proposed by a Conservative government, George Osborne, Section 24 of the Finance Act. I made a rule in business that I would never go to court. And I've only been once. I don't plan to go again, but I did it with the highest court in the land and with Tony Blair's wife, Cherie Booth, QC, as my lawyer. We took on HMRC to try and fight this tax and we lost. And when we lost, we had massive support from the industry, but when we lost, I realised that the tide had turned. Then we had Brexit, you know what that did to the property market.
Sure.
So I saw the writing on the wall. Been doing it for 13, 14 years at that point, and decided that actually I wanted to move on to greener pastures, because I think timing is so important in business. And so we're in a downward cycle for property, and it will probably come back again at some point in the future. But no, I divested. I actually sold my last property the day after the mini budget. I'd like to say it was like genius timing,
Sure.
but the completion was literally the day after Liz Truss and Kwarteng did that devastating mini budget.
That was stressful.
It was horrific.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give someone looking to invest in property now, particularly if they were looking to follow the HMO model, which you know so much about?
Yeah, so I think cash flow is king, you know, so you can always trade through in any business, in any condition. I made an assumption. I think these are good assumptions for anybody to make. Assume, you know, rents won't go up, interest rates will go up, capital values will come down, you know, all of the negative things that you can imagine. Just scenario plan what would happen if all of those things happened, and is the model still viable and robust? I think personal reasons for buying are very different to investing reasons, so let's forget the personal ones for now. From an investment point of view, cash flow is king. If you don't need to buy right now, maybe consider not buying and wait, because the market's falling. We don't know how far it's going to fall. We don't know how long it's going to last.
Sure.
And it's kind of like catching a falling knife.
Yeah.
So if you don't need to buy, get educated, learn, have mentors, you know, watch TV programs, read books. That's one of the things I did. I spent 2 years deeply researching the market before I bought a single property.
That's amazing. It's good advice, and I think that actually brings us on to, you know, just you saying that, giving that advice of be, you know, ultimate best version of yourself, skill up. You've always come across to me as super positive, high energy, you know, from the moment we met all the way through to today. Does that come naturally to you?
I think I was like always a naturally positive kid.
Sure.
But I remember, you know, there've been times in my life where I have been stressed, right? And I remember managing 20 staff at an outdoor pursuit centre when I was 20 years of age, and coming back and being given so much responsibility. I had like an anxiety attack, and I like just burst out crying. I had this knot in my stomach, and I was like, what the bloody hell's going on? My dad gave me a hug, and he was like, you know, I got over it pretty quickly, but that was probably my first experience of stress and overwhelm. And, you know, I've had various times in my life that have been really difficult. I think I've learned over a long period of time by reading books, going on courses, doing lots of therapy, NLP, all these different techniques to, you know, when I discovered stuff like counselling, coaching, NLP, a lot of people went on those courses to become a therapist to help other people. Selfishly, I went on it to sort my own shit out, right? To kind of reprogram my brain. I just thought there's all these tools where I used to be petrified of public speaking, right? If you said to me, I'd be doing this at the age of 16 or 17 or standing up in front of the room, I would just be like, run an absolute mile. And it was just through having coaches, going on courses, learning. And so it's the same thing with positivity. I think it can be learned. There are things that you can do. We realise that everybody has ups and downs. I do, right? I have some days where I just don't want to get out of bed. I feel low, flat, I eat crap, whatever. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, I just kind of embrace it, go into it, say it only lasts sort of 24, 48 hours for me. And it usually means I haven't had enough sleep, I've been eating crap, I haven't been doing physical exercise, all of these things. So I think everybody's got different ways of managing their mental health and their stress. And, you know, I've got different techniques, but, you know, in part, I'm a positive person by nature. My parents were pretty positive people, so that has an impact. But I've also learned techniques that help me stay positive. And I've got a few phrases, right? So there's always someone worse off than you, right? Is it a matter of life or death? Right? And it's like you zoom out and you sort of say, well, it's not like if I wake up in the morning and I look at my phone and there's no message saying call me urgently, and the 20 most important people in my life are fit, well, healthy, alive, it's going to be a good day. You know? That's
a great attitude. It's a mindset, isn't it? So having a positive mindset, and I think you've clearly trained that, regardless of what came to you personally, you know, and then habits breed behaviour.
Yeah.
And so it's really inspiring to see how much time you spent on yourself. It takes an effort. But then you put that into your everyday life, your business. What do you think from a staff point of view, and what do you look for in terms of if you're going to bring someone into a business, and how do you think they would describe you?
So what do I look for in staff? So I think it depends on the role, because I think there's a lot of people talk about A players. You've got to get the best person in every position. And actually there are some roles in a business. I've had businesses where we've got bookkeeping that needs to be done, and actually what you don't actually want an A player that wants to be a finance director in 2 years' time.
Sure.
They're just happy being a bookkeeper and coming in, and they'll be there in 10 years' time doing the same job and quite happy with that, and they're fulfilled outside of work. So I think it's very role dependent, but for important roles, you want A players, right? You want people value add, values aligned, you trust them, which to me means they've got character, the right attitude, but they've also got competence. They can do what needs to be done. And a fundamentally important thing is, are they coachable? Are they teachable? Do they want to learn? Do they want to continue to learn and progress and grow? So that's that part of it. In terms of what they might say about me, I ask for feedback regularly, and we've done psychometrics and surveys and all that sort of thing. So for the most part, the positives are sort of leader, inspiring, mentoring, coaching, supportive, all of those sorts of things. On the other side of it, sometimes inconsistent, a little bit erratic, up in the clouds, so it's that natural entrepreneurial. We have a million ideas. I think I'm way better than I used to be at kind of narrowing it down.
Right.
And rather than just having an idea and blurting it out loud, just like, okay, think about it, write it down, be more considered, and having the right team around me that, like David, who's the MD of a lot of the businesses I've got, is an accountant, finance, process, legal, he's entrepreneurial as well, but we're a great balance.
That's awesome. So when COVID hit,
Yeah.
how did that affect your business, and indeed, just what did you notice about the people around you and family? What were those effects in your world?
I think from a business point of view, I was very fortunate in that I was kind of coming out of the property businesses. I did actually roll my sleeves up and get back involved with the business I'd exited, because it was in, there are a lot of people that bought into a business model that I'd created. So I was very hands-on in trying to help manage people through that process, and did that for about 2 months. And then we had digital marketing, we're making investments in e-commerce technology, and COVID had a massive, apart from the first sort of 3 to 4 weeks, there was a massive COVID bounce. People couldn't go out,
Sure.
so they were buying stuff online.
Yeah.
People that had never bought online were now buying online.
People had so much more time.
Totally. Things like Zoom, Shopify, there was loads of stock. We made some investments at that time in tech and e-commerce businesses, so they absolutely flew. So for me, COVID was actually a pretty positive thing in a business sense,
Sure.
and actually accelerated positively a lot of things we were doing. And then I think from a family point of view, I've always spent a lot of time, as you know, with my kids and family, but it was just lovely to kind of walk around the golf course in lockdown, first lockdown especially. The sun was out, with dads that were building sandcastles in the golf course, in the bunker, and you just see people like laying out on the greens and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've just got some amazing memories actually with the kids at home, in the garden, golf course, that sort of stuff. The most frustrating thing is not being able to take the boat out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, of course. No, it was a difficult time for a lot of people, but in terms of business, you were able to be in the right place at the right time, which you made your own luck at the end of the day, and you're able to be reactive.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? What keeps you busy every day now?
So doing the business I was born to lead, which is an angel investment fund, Bolt Angels, investing in inspiring founders. So I've spent 25 odd years running businesses myself. And actually what I love doing now is investing time, money, building a community of angel investors that put capital, consultancy, mentoring, connections. So with, Jack just asked a question that we'll obviously talk about.
Sure.
Mentoring the founders, supporting the team, working with you on it, other people. I love that part of it. Not having the day-to-day responsibility of doing everything, and being a bit more zoomed out, a bit more strategic, that coaching, mentoring, helping bring the right people in.
Steve, so we've actually combined on Jack. Just Ask a Question, JAAQ. We both met Danny Gray April last year, 2022. And tell us about the journey with Jack from your point of view to where we are now.
So Just Ask a Question and Danny spoke at one of our conferences that we were both at in April 2022, both inspired by his energy, his passion, his vision. Had 2 businesses at that time, but showed this video right at the end of this amazing mental health platform. And it was, conversational, empathic technology where it's like you're having a conversation with somebody. There's this massive gap between somebody having a mental health issue and actually reaching crisis can be up to 10 years before they actually do that. And Jack fills that gap where you can get access to world-leading experts. So that for me tied into personal development, professional development, offering people support, post-COVID, the stress, people working from home, financial worries, all of these things. And it just seemed to be of the moment in that people were talking about it. When we grew up, stiff upper lip, don't cry, all of our emotions were really suppressed by our parents, by society. And, if you showed any form of weakness, people would take the mickey out of you. It just wasn't the done thing. So I think it's amazing that the mental health conversation has just moved on massively and become normalized, and tools like Jack exist.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's been incredible. It launched obviously November last year, and the feedback and just the amount of incoming, let alone anyone you choose to speak to about it and where it sits, no one can believe it wasn't existing before.
100%.
You've just touched on it, but clearly, growing up in that man up, sink or swim, very much resonates with me, and it's been so amazing to see just how many people have got involved with Jack. And anytime you speak to anyone, everyone wants to get involved. But why do you think it's only recently that people are embracing mental health, talking about it as if, for example, if you'd gone to the gym last night and you'd been with a personal trainer, quite happy to tell me that, but you wouldn't necessarily say, well, I had a therapist session last night about my anxiety, or say that you're stressed or worried about financial issues or whatever it might be. Why do you think that's changing? It's a positive thing. And of course, Jack is, a massive part of that. But why do you think that shift is happening now?
I think there's a number of reasons. I think social media plays a massive part in it, in that people have been, if you think about traditionally pre-social media, the narrative was dominated by newspapers, television programs. There was a way of accessing that, and they had rules about what they would do, whereas now anybody can film themselves, write, speak, do podcasts. So I think there's been a gradual shift, partly because of social media, partly because I think it's just natural human evolution, right? We kind of evolve as human beings, and it's just common sense in many ways, right? If you think about it, you just suppress your emotions and then just explode and commit suicide or just bury how you feel. We know that that's not the best way to do things. And then you've got things like, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, mental health movement. So because of social media, because of human evolution, I think also our kids, right, the younger generation, whether people in their 30s, 20s, it's because it's common sense and because it's being shared more on social media. I think people openly talk about it.
Yeah.
And
one of the positives of social media. Then.
Totally. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. Steve, you've mentioned a number of things and practices that you do for your own mental health. If you could pick, say, 2 that are the most important to you, almost like daily habits or something you just religiously try and do every day, like a morning routine or meditation, is there 2 things that you would say that just are so important?
Yeah, I think the 2 for me, sleep, number 1. And that can be sleep, meditation, power naps. I'm a great fan of a power nap. I'm very fortunate in that I can have a 20, 30-minute sleep in the afternoon or early evening and wake up as if I've slept for 8 hours.
So recharged.
So recharge, I can just do that and it's awesome. So sometimes when I'm really busy, I kind of make sure I have that, and then I can almost do an 8-hour shift of work and then another 8-hour shift of work in a 24-hour period. So that's one of the ways I've achieved a lot, is by working in that way. So sleep, I think, is so important, has such a negative effect on mental health. And then the other one is physical exercise. I've always, I don't exercise every single day. I'm not the kind of person that has a morning routine where I get up at 5 and I do this. And actually, I don't particularly like routine. But physical, well, yesterday I did a load of phone calls and voice notes on my phone. I walked for 8 miles right around London. walked here, walked back again. And so it's just things like that, getting physical exercise, being out in nature, fresh air. It's scientifically proven both sleep and physical exercise are two of the most important things I think people can do for mental health. And that's what I do.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant you shared that. And actually, that resonates with me. If I know I've got a couple of hours of phone calls to make, why sit at a desk? Why sit in a chair when you can just get out and walk? Might be a bit of wind noise for whoever you're talking to.
Even if you pace around the office, right?
I do, yeah.
I've got a mini trampoline, so I sometimes do that. People are like, what's that bouncing noise in the
You've done that
background?
with me on the phone before. I have genuinely, I think I called you out and said, what are you doing? And I've been...
It's not so good on a video call.
Yeah, no, I know. I've got a gym at home and use the exercise bike, and you've got to be careful not to puff yourself out. You also mentioned, just in terms of the way you've gone about mentoring, reading books, probably includes podcasts. I'd love to know what book you would recommend from a self-development and motivation point of view. What would you recommend? One
of my favourites that's really practical, had a big impact on me, is a book called Goals by one of my mentors, somebody I met called Brian Tracy. Okay. So it's a classic. It's been around a very long time, but I'm a great believer in thoughts become things, right? For this glass to exist in the real world, it first was an idea in somebody's head. They had to sort of think, okay, what shape's it going to be? Then they write that down as a sketch, or an architect for a building, and then you make a prototype and you actually build the thing. And everything that we see in the world starts in there. Yeah. Thoughts become things. So when it comes to your own life, actually having goals, not just about, I want a nice house, I want a nice car. It can be about, I talk about goals, being goals, how you want to be in life. Be, do, have, and give, right? So a lot of people focus on having goals, but what you want to do, whether it's holidays, great relationships with friends and family, philanthropic goals, making a difference. But yeah, that book, Goals by Brian Tracy, would be my number one. I had a question coming, which is, do you set goals? You've just answered it. 100%. Yeah, and I think it's a skill, right? So I think it's like a lot of things in life. People think, oh yeah, setting a goal, smart objectives, you write them down, make sure they're specific, measurable. It's a skill, right? It's like somebody can do karate and do their first lesson, or somebody can be a black belt. And so goal setting is a very similar thing. There is a skill to it. The more you do it, like working out in the gym, the stronger you get. It's it's a refined art. That's why that book is so good. So yeah, absolutely. I've been setting goals for 25 years. Right. Had a massive impact on my life. Interestingly, last week I picked some up from 20 years ago that I'd written down when early on in the process. 90% of them have come true. Because the only thing with goals, I think, is that people find frustrating. They put a date on it. They're supposed to be time bound, but it's the one thing you can't predict. So some of the goals I wrote down 20 years ago happened 6 months later. Some of them took 15 years. Some of them happened, but then I lost them, and then get them back again, or some of them change. But when you write them down, even if you don't look at them, you don't need to look at them every day. It's just having that mental clarity of what do I want to be, do, have, and give in my life. And the more people can do that, whether it's written down, vision boards. Some people I used to create mind movies where I just use my little iMovie on my computer, put images to music, and just watch that on a daily basis. Really, really powerful. What motivates you to get up in the morning? So you're clearly already motivated and positive, but when you wake up in the morning, is there a moment where you've got that drive and focus of what you're trying to achieve? And is there a consistency and a constant to that? Because there's individual goals that go with the day, the week, the month, the year from a business point of view and so on. But is that just an underlying drive and motivation? I think it's not like I wake up and have an individual thought. There's like an overlay to my life, which is, it's my belief that we get one chance on this earth. Right, and I don't want to have any regrets when I'm on my deathbed. Right, I've read books about people, and never do they say when they're on their deathbed, what would you have done differently in your life? Yeah. They never say, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. I wish I'd had more meetings. Right, so for me, it's about making the most of my life, achieving my full potential, and that's about being the best I can be and helping other people be the best they can be. So it's not, I don't aspire to be a billionaire. I don't have, I think we've both been through that journey, right? A lot of people go through that journey of material accumulation. I've had the, brand new convertible fast car and the 5,000 square foot house and all of those sorts of things. And actually you just collect more and more material possessions. They come with a burden of ownership. And actually they don't really make you happy. In fact, if anything, they kind of just give you more responsibility and more burdens and a bigger garden to look after and all those sorts of things. So for me, it's actually, and Harvard studies show real satisfaction comes from helping other people, being the best you can be, contributing. And Tony Robbins talks about 6 human needs. We all have a need for certainty and variety, recognition, love and connection, contribution and growth. And so I've got this little tool that I use where I score myself on a quarterly basis against those 6 things. And it's like, okay, I don't have enough. I'm not learning enough, or I'm not growing enough. That's 4 out of 10. Right, I need to work on that, read more books, go on a course, get another mentor, have a coach, So
you're constantly disciplining yourself. You're constantly keeping yourself in check.
Yeah.
Almost. Do you journal?
I have done. I don't do it on a daily, regular basis. So I have done it. What I've found really powerful, I'm doing it with one of my kids at the moment. I think there's real magic sometimes whether it's a business partnership or a family relationship, sounds weird, right? But to have a journal between 2 people. So I did it with a business partner once where we were getting into a bit of a sticky situation. We had different points of view. Some of the meetings were quite heated. And I said, look, I'm going to write a shared document in Google. I'll write it down, my thoughts, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking.
Sure.
Right, now you pick it up, you comment on my stuff, you add what you're thinking and feeling. And so it's kind of a journal between 2 people. And I'm doing it with one of my kids at the moment. They're going through a choice point in life, what they're going to do with their career, where they're going. And I'm like, right, this is a letter. I love, I've told them I'm doing it and why. But it's like, I love you. These are my thoughts. I want to share them with you. I'd like to know what you're thinking, and it's great because they can just write that when they want to in their own time. It's not as direct as a personal conversation sometimes. So co-journaling, I think, is also a pretty amazing thing to do.
How have you managed to juggle business and your personal life and family? You clearly make time for yourself and that discipline we mentioned to do with self-development. You clearly make time for business, and I know you managed a number of times in your life to be able to get away a lot, in Ibiza a lot last year, and always made time for hobbies, which is a skill. A lot of people struggle with that. How did you juggle that?
So I think for me, it started with a decision. I had a mentor, I heard him on stage, billionaire, and he said, I take 3 months holiday every year, or 1 week off every month. And I was in the audience working 90 hours a week, running a business. And my immediate thought was, you can't, you're not allowed to. They're not the rule. If you want to be successful, it's about hustle, it's about grind, it's about 90-hour weeks, it's about missing the kids' sports day because, all of those sorts of things. So I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it comes back to goals. I said, right, I'm going to take 3 months holiday every year. I wrote it down, 2002. Took me till 2004 to achieve it. I did it. Now, that doesn't mean I spent 3 months on a beach sunbathing. Sure. Right? My brain doesn't work that way, but I went away with my kids, for the most part, and family, for 3 months in 2004. And you know what? It's one of the most successful years I've ever had. I was recharged, I was fit, I was healthy, I would always come back with great ideas. I would stay in touch, I would do work while I was out there. And then I did that every year, right through until 2020 when COVID came along. So for 16 years, I took 3 months holiday every year, traveling, doing stuff, out on the boat, those sorts of things. So that for me, that kind of conscious choice and decision was a game changer. And then coming out of COVID, as you say, just got a place in Ibiza, would be going out there every month and just love being on a boat, fishing in the sea, diving, just being in the certain natural environments that I really, really like. So taking time off, traveling and being in the natural world.
That's awesome. What's next for Steve Bolton?
So obviously Jack, we want to take to the moon. And transform the lives of hopefully 1 billion plus people, which would be incredible.
It's exciting, isn't it?
So exciting. So that's amazing. And then I've got the Angel Investment Fund, which fuels company like Jack's. And just basically changing the world through business and mentoring, funding, supporting entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome talking to you. It's been brilliant to get back in touch with you in terms of actually doing business together. And I've learned lots from this chat, even though we've known each other 16 years. So just, brilliant to be able to have that chat.
Awesome, mate.
Cheers, Steve.